There is a con artist operating on the streets of Cairo, Egypt. Her name is Nari. She's a quick-tongued, witty girl who nurtures dreams of becoming a doctor. But this is a dangerous time. The French are back in Egypt, and it's the latter years of the so-called Napoleonic Wars. So there she is, conning some fat fool of an officer who thinks he's going to die. You know, the typical things one does to survive. But then she does something really stupid. She starts doing exorcism ceremonies. Zaz, trying to earn some more money. It's in the midst of one such ceremony that she makes her mistake, depending on how you see it. She's trying to calm down the Djinn inside a little girl's body, the genie, that's what they call them. So there they are, the musicians are beating their drums in tempo, the old women are ululating, and she's dancing and singing songs of old poems. All of that adds to the mystique. And then she makes her mistake. She slips into her mother tongue, the strange language that no one but her seems to speak. It ends up summoning a Djinn warrior from across the world and sending up a beacon that brings her to the attention of several Ifrit. After a chase through the streets of Cairo that culminates in ancient burial grounds and waking zombies, they escape. And Nari starts learning about this hidden world that she apparently belongs to. She learns of Daevabad, the city of brass, and of the history of the Daeva, the beings human singers and poets call Djinn. Long ago, the creator made this world. He nurtured it, chipped at the edges until he had shaped a thing of true beauty. A world of azure blue seas, varied landscapes ranging from rich forests to baking deserts, rising mountains and sinking valleys, and above it all, a million stars winked upon this jewel in mirth, while the sun and moon bathed it in their luminescence. Then the creators formed beings, souled beings. At first he made creatures out of air. They were bird-like and they had a strange affinity for the element of the creation. These went forth into the world and built great cities in the clouds. They sang strange songs and were said to be very close to heaven. They were the Peri. But the creator was not done. He made beings out of water, and these occupied all the waterways and seas and rivers. They were the Marid, wild and strange people who reveled in sacrifice and worship. Even Djinn are wary of them. At last, the creator made the Daeva, a people of fire brought into the world. They were strange spirits, monstrous in appearance, but they were not held to their form. They were greatly powerful. Their power was enough to match those of the Peri. They could change their shape, they could raise up great sandstorms and such. So far, all the beings that had been created had access to magic, and they could do great things. But at last, the creator made beings out of earth, souled beings, humans. That is the origin of our race. Somehow, they had no access to any of the arcane wonders that the rest of the souled beings had access to. They were unable to see these creatures. They went forth into the world and leveled it, took command of it. They built great cities of their own. They made cultures and formed their own peoples. Most of the other souled creatures ignored humans and left them to their own devices. But the Daeva were greatly insulted or offended by them. To them, they were dumb, dull things, stumbling over this world, their world, making a nuisance of themselves. These spirits of fire looked down on human beings and they saw how these flesh bugs tamed their lands, how they built such great cities and invented such things that no one had thought of before. Perhaps they grew jealous, or perhaps they just hated them on principle. The fact is that they descended into the world below and they tormented them. Some demanded worship, some stole away their children, some did even greater horrors upon the human beings. A warning came down from the Peris. A decree had been made in heaven that each being was to attend to its own matters, that none should delve into the matters of a lesser being. The Daeva, for whatever reason, did not listen. Finally, a great prophet was called from amongst the humans, called to judge the Daeva, as they deserved. Speaking as a human strictly, I am against being tormented by spirits of flame. The man called was Suleiman. He was a great prophet, and he was given a seal, a ring that gave him great power. With a single word, he stripped all the Deva of their powers, and he called them forth to be judged. Many came, a great host, all bowing before this human being who had displayed such strangeness. Without their magic, they were nothing. Suleiman set them a penance, and for 100 years they toiled as his servants, howling bricks and building him a great palace and a great city. At last, when their penance was over, Suleiman gave them some of their power, with a catch. He bound them to their original forms, denying them their power of shape-shifting, because he thought it made them more likely to turn to duplicity. He also reduced their power significantly. Where once they had been maelstroms of magic, now they had access to only a few abilities. He also changed them such that they looked human. He divided them into 6 tribes and scattered them to the ends of the world, but at least it seemed to the Daeva, who now found themselves lost and not knowing what they were to do, because they had been made mortal. They would live for 200 odd years and then they would pass from this world and a new generation would take over. Of course, many were bitter at this punishment. In fact, not all Daeva had shown up to be punished by this human who they looked down upon. These remained bound in their original form. They were stripped of their magic, yes, but they were bound in bodies that had been meant to live for millennia, and so they existed forever, seething in their resentment of these humans and what they had stolen from them. They became the Ifrit. They dedicated themselves to finding other alternatives to magic, and they stumbled into a discovery: blood magic. It allowed them to travel through lightning storms and do other foul things, including possess human beings. The Ifrit hated humans, but they also looked down on their cousins, the Daeva. To them, the Daeva represented all that Suleiman had wrought against them. Out of their resentment, they started this deplorable habit of capturing Djinn, or rather capturing Daeva, imprisoning them in lamps or other magical objects, and scattering them amongst the human race. To a human who discovered a magical ring at the bottom of a well, or who fished a bottle from the ocean's floor only to discover that there lay a Djinn, a being of immense power who would do anything they commanded, grant them any wish. And oh, this is not like the stories you've heard of 3 wishes. They had infinite wishes. Imagine what humans would do with such great power. They became conquerors. They became princes. They wanted to be great men, and they had the power to do it, and so they did. Now, there was a catch to all of this. A certain curse laid within the lamps or the magical objects. More often than not, the Djinn servant was driven to madness by all this expenditure of magic and their slavery. More often than not, the Djinn, or rather the Daeva, ended up killing the human. And so the cycle was repeated. To the Ifrit, this was a source of great entertainment. They liked watching these pitiful creatures, humans, destroy themselves. But that is another story. Back to Suleiman. In all the years that the Daeva had slaved for him and worked to build his great city and great palace, Suleiman had retained a great distrust for them. That's why he refused to grant them their original powers. But he had come to trust one Daeva, his cupbearer. Her name was Anahid, and she was the only one of the rest that he ever trusted. Once the whole matter was over, for some reason or other, he granted her his seal, the ring that bore the seal of Suleiman. Anahid looked at the world, so chaotic at this period, and looked at her people, and she wanted something better for them. The Daevas were scared of anything that might call the wrath of a prophet upon them, and many just strived to distance themselves from humans. They were broken people, and Anahid wanted to create something for them, a place where they will be free to be themselves. And so Anahid created a city, the city she named Daevabad. It would be home to all the Daeva who so chose, and it would do everything it could to prevent the rise of another prophet who might cripple their people further. To this end, Daevabad became the home of many Djinn and something else, something unexpected. When Suleiman had bound the Djinn to their human forms. He had not realized what this meant. Djinn, or rather Daeva, would now mate with human beings and conceive halflings, children with Daeva blood and human blood. To many Daeva, these half-human, half-Djinn creatures, or rather offspring, presented a great danger. Many thought that they would make another prophet be called upon, that they would expose them and call the wrath of another prophet who would come to make their lives worse. There's a whole history about the atrocities committed by these peoples and it shook their world, but we shall not go into this. As regards to the creation story, it's difficult to ascertain how much of it is true, how much of it is myth passed down from ancestor to descendant as fact. But this is the tale as it was told to Nari by a Djinn warrior of great renown who had done terrible things, whose arms were bloody and his crouch still a memory to haunt the masses. This warrior saved her from an ifrit in Cairo, and he snatched her from her mundane world into one of magic. But who can say what adventures lie before her? Will she find wonder or horror? Will she find beauty or blood? Nari has always wanted a home for herself. Will she perhaps find it in the city of her descendants, this Daevabad, this mythical city of brass? To find out, you shall have to read the Daevabad Trilogy. I highly recommend this series. It's very different from anything else you've read. It reminds me of Children of the Lamb, just the story I started with. Children of the Lamb by P.B. Kerr. Most of fantasy that we consume is, shall I say, Western, or at least inspired by European or some sort of the witches and the wizards. It's obviously inspired by European folklore. This is a different. Think back to when you were a kid and you were watching Aladdin. There's just that feeling of bazaars and Djinn and I don't know. It's just a whole different kind of magic set in a baking desert. The backdrop is just so different. The culture, the flair, the hot drinks it's just wonderful. I highly recommend this series. It's really done well. It speaks a lot. There are a lot of anatomies to it. The degradation of the people, a sort of form of racism, religion, and how a person's beliefs, and the monsters that we hail as heroes. Plus, there's love. It's also a love story, and you really don't know what to expect. Especially the first book, it steers you towards a certain, and you think this is what's gonna happen, but it surprises you. There are a lot of twists. It's just an all-round great read. I highly recommend. I really, really do. It's a great story. Read it. Tell me what you think. If you've read it, also don't be shy. Tell me what you think. But that is it for me. You should subscribe and like the video, and talk to me in the comments down below. Otherwise, I have been in place. Look out for my next video.